Hello, art appreciators. This is Nina Peterson. Today we're going to be going over the elements of design. The elements of design are the visual building blocks of art. They include line, space, light, color, texture, pattern, and time and motion. You'll recall from our first unit that these are the characteristics that make art look the way it looks. So these are the formal qualities. Remember, I mentioned that we'll be focusing on analyzing artwork for subject matter, content, context, and formal qualities. So in this unit, we'll be building the foundation that will allow us to do formal analysis, that will allow us to analyze these elements of design. In today's session, we'll be looking at line, space, light, and color. And next week, we'll pick back up with texture, pattern, and time and motion. The elements of design all work together, and their visual presence is interdependent. So isolating these elements can sometimes be difficult, sometimes it's impossible. The way the elements come together creates an entire composition and a final work of art. So it's important to keep in mind that when we're distinguishing each one of these elements, we could also talk about the other elements and how they play a role in the composition. Line is the first element of design that we're going to be looking at. And we'll be talking about the difference between outline and contour line. We'll also be talking about implied line. A line is a mark left by a moving point, can be actual or implied, and it can vary in thickness and density. So again, I want to point out that all of the elements work together. So certain aspects of a composition can embody multiple elements at the same time. Identifying what element you're looking at depends on the question asked and the answer you seek to find. Outline is the edge of a shape of a figure that's depicted by an actual line drawn or painted on the surface, on the working surface. And this generally has the effect of flattening space. You can think of a map like this one that we're looking at here as outlines. It's like a coloring book. So these lines just define the perimeter, the outline of a shape. This contrasts with contour line. Contours are the perceived lines that mark the border of an object in space. The difference between outline and contour is that contour line visually describes or indicates the form or the three-dimensional aspects of an object. You can think of contour lines as these topographic maps, right? All of these different lines here indicate the depth of this mountain or of this hill. In this sketch of a foot, we're looking at these lines which appear to indicate the shift in dimension of this foot. So this part of the foot is up closer to our visual space than this portion of the foot, than the bottom of the foot. Additionally, we've got this sketch here by Jacques-Louis David, and he has depicted Marie Antoinette on her way to the guillotine in 1793, just as the French Revolution was unfolding. David has used contour lines to indicate her anatomy. He has used this sort of lightning bolt line in order to indicate the shift between her rib cage and her breast here. So we get an idea that this is more voluminous than this area of her body. Additionally, we're seeing this line down here indicating a shift in form from her thigh to her knee. So if we compare Jacques-Louis David's depiction of Marie Antoinette preparing herself to be beheaded with this depiction of Marie Antoinette, I talked about this painting in one of our first videos, or in the first video. We see that line and all of the other formal elements can really have a profound effect on mood, or on the portrayal of emotion. Jacques-Louis David has used very simple lines here. There's a great deal of economy of line. He doesn't have any extra lines. Everything has a distinct purpose here. And certainly, Louise Elisabeth Vigée-Lebrun uses line in her paintings, or in this painting. She's got this column here, which is made up of lines. But the lines are working with other formal elements. They're not as readily identifiable as these lines here. And certainly Marie Antoinette's facial expression, which is indicated with just a few lines, is quite powerful. She looks in many ways resolute and brave in the face of her imminent death. Her posture is upright, but the profile of her face isn't as idealized as the depiction of Marie Antoinette by Vigée-Lebrun. So we can see that Jacques-Louis David isn't as concerned with projecting this idealized version of the Mother of France. Rather, he's just capturing this moment with a few quick, sketchy lines. So if we're looking at Tom Wesselmann's Judy on Blue Blanket, we can see that this is mostly outline. But we do have a few contour lines here, right? This kind of contours of the figure's breasts. So outlines and contour lines can work together, as is the case with Egon Schiele's artwork here. We've got a great deal of contour lines in this sheet that the woman is lying on, but her body, her leg here, look, that's outlined with this black line. There's not contour lines here to indicate form. Rather, there's modeling. There's these shifts in value. We'll get to modeling in a little bit. But her leg is really outlined. Honoré Daumier's Man on a Horse is a very clear depiction of contour line. It's very busy. There's lots of lines indicating form here. Kind of the roundness of this horse's rump is indicated using multiple contour lines. Implied line is a line that's created by movement or direction, such as the line that's established by a pointing finger or the direction of a glance, perhaps a body moving through space. So in Andrew Wyeth's Christina's world, we've got this very distinct implied line of Christina's gaze back to the house or back to this building. We can imagine this straight line here. Additionally, Titian's assumption of the Virgin features a great number of implied lines. We've got an implied line from the gaze of the Virgin up to the heavens here, so this vertical line. We've also got the implied lines of the spectators down below, all gazing up to the Virgin. They're gesturing, which again creates this implied line. It's an imaginary line. We don't actually see the line from this figure's hand up to the Virgin, but we fill that in our minds. Antonio Canova's Theseus defeating the Centaur features a number of implied lines as well. Theseus looks down to the Centaur, and this is an implied line, but in many ways it's also an actual line because his gaze almost seems to connect to his shoulder, which then creates an actual line down to the throat of the Centaur. So again, you can see these different kinds of lines working together. We also have, in this instance, a curving implied line. They don't have to be straight implied lines. We get the sense that Theseus is about to swing this bat, and so this would create a curving implied line which follows the motion of his hand and which follows the motion of his bat. I'm going to pick back up this discussion of line in a second video, in part 2 of the video. In the second part of the video, I will also be discussing color and space. So check out those other videos to finish off this discussion of line. And as you're looking at this painting here that I've put on the screen, think about the lines which Jacques-Louis David uses to make up the bodies of these male figures here. And then think about the lines that Jacques-Louis David uses to create the bodies of the women who are sitting here to the right of this painting. And we'll talk about this painting in further depth in part 2 of the video.